Hello everyone, welcome to Nanawa's channel. This is the full version of I was abandoned while pregnant. Now my child is the heir to an empire. The city lights of Chicago flickered through the window of my tiny apartment, but they couldn't drown out the storm raging inside me. My name's Emily, and at 24 I thought I had it all figured out. I was in love, madly, stupidly, head over heels in love with Jake. He was the kind of guy who turned heads. Sharp jawline, piercing blue eyes, and a smile that could charm anyone. He was climbing the corporate ladder at a sleek downtown firm, always dressed in tailored suits, always talking about the big picture. I was just a barista with dreams of opening my own bakery, but when I was with him, I felt like I could conquer the world. We'd been together for 2 years, and I poured everything into us. I'd stay up late baking his favorite chocolate chip cookies after a long shift, just to see him smile. I'd cancel plans with friends to be at his work events, cheering him on as he schmoozed with the big shots. He called me his good luck charm, and I believed it. I believed him. That was my first mistake. It was a chilly October evening when I found out I was pregnant. I sat on the bathroom floor, staring at the 2 pink lines on the test, my heart pounding like a drum. I was scared, sure, but there was this spark of joy too. A baby. Our baby. I imagined Jake's face lighting up, his arms wrapping around me, promising we'd figure it out together. I spent the whole day planning how to tell him, even bought a tiny pair of baby shoes to make it special. That night, I cooked his favorite, steak and mashed potatoes, and set the table with candles. When he walked in, he looked tired, distracted, but I chalked it up to work stress. "Jake, I have something to tell you," I said, my voice trembling with excitement. I handed him the little box with the shoes. He opened it, and his face, it didn't light up. It froze. His eyes went cold, like I'd just handed him a ticking bomb. "Emily, what is this?" His voice was sharp, cutting through the warmth of the room. "I'm pregnant," I said, forcing a smile, waiting for him to soften. He didn't. He just stared at the shoes, then at me, like I'd betrayed him. "Pregnant?" He laughed, but it wasn't warm or kind. It was bitter, almost cruel. "You're kidding, right? This isn't part of the plan, Em. No, it's unexpected," I stammered, "but we can do this together." He stood up, pacing the room like a caged animal. "Together? Emily, I'm not ready to be a dad. I've got deals to close, promotions to chase. I won't do this." My stomach twisted. "What are you saying?" He stopped, looked me dead in the eyes, and said the words that shattered my world. "You need to get rid of it. I'm not signing up for this. Get rid of it." Like our baby was a problem to be erased. I felt the air leave my lungs, my knees buckling. "Jake, this is our child," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. "You can't mean that." But he did. He grabbed his jacket, his face hard as stone. "I'm not built for this, Emily. If you keep it, you're on your own." I begged him to stay, to talk, to care, but he walked out, slamming the door behind him. I stood there, clutching the baby shoes, my dreams crumbling around me. The man I loved, the man I thought loved me, had just thrown us away like we were nothing. It started raining that night. A cold, relentless downpour. I didn't care. I walked outside, my clothes soaking through, my hands cradling my barely there bump. The city buzzed around me, cars honking, people rushing, but I was alone, truly alone. I sank to my knees on the wet sidewalk, tears mixing with the rain. "I won't let you go," I whispered to the life inside me. "I promise." That was the moment I knew Jake might have turned his back, but I wouldn't. Not on my baby. Not on myself. No matter how hard it got, I'd keep going. For us. The bus ride to my hometown in rural Illinois felt like a funeral procession. I stared out the window, my hands resting on my growing belly, as Chicago's skyscrapers faded into endless fields of corn. I was 24, pregnant, and alone. Jake's words still echoed in my head. "You're on your own." He hadn't called, texted, or shown up since that night. I kept hoping he'd change his mind, but my phone stayed silent. So I packed my bags and left the city, running back to the only place I'd ever felt safe. home, but home wasn't the sanctuary I'd imagined. My parents' small farmhouse, with its creaky porch and faded yellow paint, was a refuge. But the town? It was a pressure cooker of gossip. The moment I stepped off the bus, I felt the stares. Mrs. Larson at the grocery store whispered to her friend as I walked by, my bump impossible to hide. "Poor thing," I overheard. "That city boy?" Left her high and dry. At church, the sermons about sin felt like they were aimed right at me. I wanted to scream, "I'm not ashamed," but I just clutched my mom's hand and kept my head down. My parents were saints, but even they couldn't shield me from the judgment. Dad would pat my shoulder saying, "We'll get through this, Em." Mom helped me set up a crib in my old bedroom, but I saw the worry in her eyes. Worry about money, about my future, about what people would say. I'd lie awake at night, my hands on my belly, feeling the baby kick. "It's just you and me, little one," I'd whisper. "I'll make this work." Work was the only way to survive. I took 2 jobs, waitressing at Rosie's Diner during the day and sewing at a local tailor shop at night. The diner was brutal. My feet ached, my back screamed, and the tips barely covered prenatal vitamins. Customers weren't shy about their opinions either. "You're too young to be a mom," one guy said, tossing $1 on the table. At the tailor shop, I'd stitch until my fingers bled, racing to meet quotas. Every penny went to doctor visits, baby clothes, and a cheap stroller. I found at a thrift store. The nights were the hardest. I'd collapse on my bed, too tired to cry, but the loneliness clawed at me. I'd think about Jake, his laugh, his promises, the way he used to call me his girl. Had it all been a lie? I stopped checking my phone after a month. He wasn't coming back. But the worst part wasn't his betrayal. It was the shame the town piled on me. "That Emily girl," they'd say at the diner, "thought she could keep a man like that." I wanted to disappear, but I couldn't. Not when I had a baby counting on me. One night, I sat on the porch, the summer air thick with fireflies. I was 7 months along, my belly round and heavy. I pressed my hands to it, feeling a strong kick. "I know it's tough, kiddo," I said softly, "but I promise I'll never leave you. I'll fight for you." That promise kept me going, through the whispers, the exhaustion, the fear. Then, one crisp September morning, he arrived. I was at the hospital, gripping my mom's hand as the contractions hit. After hours of pain and prayers, I heard his cry, sharp, fierce, alive. They placed him in my arms and my world shifted. My son, Ethan, was perfect. Tiny hands, a shock of dark hair, and eyes that looked exactly like Jake's. I stared into those eyes, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. "We made it," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "You're here, and I'm never letting you go." But as I held him, I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The town's whispers wouldn't stop. The bills wouldn't pay themselves. And those eyes, Jake's eyes, were a reminder of the man who'd abandoned us. Still, I looked at Ethan and felt a fire ignite inside me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was fighting. For him. For us. 2 years after Ethan's birth, life in my small Illinois town still felt like walking through a minefield. I'd gotten used to the whispers at Rosie's Diner, the pitying looks at the grocery store. I was 26 now, juggling my waitressing job and late-night sewing gigs to keep us afloat. Ethan was my light, his giggles, his tiny hand in mine, his curious blue eyes that still reminded me of Jake. But raising him alone was a weight I carried every day. I'd promised him I'd be enough, but some nights I wondered if I was lying. It was a sunny Saturday at the town's annual harvest festival when everything changed. I was pushing Ethan's stroller through the bustling fair, the air thick with the smell of cotton candy and fried dough. Ethan, now a chubby 2-year-old, was clapping at a juggler when I bumped into someone, nearly spilling my lemonade. "Oh, I'm so sorry," I said, looking up into the warmest brown eyes I'd ever seen. "No harm done?" the man said, his voice low and kind. He was in his mid-30s with a rugged jawline and a flannel shirt that screamed small-town charm. "I'm Michael." He crouched down to Ethan's level, smiling. "And who's this little guy?" "That's Ethan," I said, my guard up. I wasn't used to strangers being kind without wanting something. But Michael just handed Ethan a balloon from a nearby vendor, chuckling as my son's face lit up. Michael was a widower, I learned over the next few weeks. He'd lost his wife to cancer 3 years earlier and had no kids of his own. He ran a hardware store in town but kept to himself, the kind of guy who fixed your porch step without asking for credit. We kept running into each other at the diner, the park, the library where I took Ethan for story time. Each time he'd ask about Ethan, bring him a small toy, or offer to carry my grocery bags. Slowly, I started to trust him. One evening, he showed up at the diner just as my shift ended. "Let me take you and Ethan for ice cream," he said. I hesitated. Men didn't just do that in my world. But Ethan was tugging at my hand, chanting, "Ice cream!" So we went. Watching Michael scoop mint chocolate chip for Ethan, laughing as it smeared on his cheeks, I felt something I hadn't in years. Safe. Our dates became a routine. Picnics by the lake, movie nights at his cozy house, Ethan always included. Michael didn't just court me. He embraced my son like he was his own. He'd read Ethan bedtime stories, build block towers, even sing off-key lullabies. I'd catch myself staring, wondering how someone so good could exist after someone so cruel. 6 months later, Michael proposed. Not with a flashy ring or a public stunt, but on his porch swing, Ethan asleep in my lap. "I love you, Emily," he said, his eyes steady. "And I love Ethan like he's mine. I want us to be a family." I cried so hard I could barely say yes. Our wedding was small, just family and a few friends at a local barn venue. I wore a simple white dress, Ethan in a tiny suit, stealing the show as he toddled down the aisle. Michael's vows were quiet but fierce. "I promise to be your home, Emily. You and Ethan will never be alone again." When he kissed me, the crowd cheered, but all I heard was my heart saying, "This is real." A few months later, we were at home, Ethan playing with his toy trucks. Michael was on the floor pretending to be a monster truck, while Ethan squealed. Then, out of nowhere, Ethan looked up at Michael and said, "Dada?" The room went still. Michael's eyes filled with tears. He scooped Ethan up, hugging him tight, his voice breaking. "Yeah, buddy, I'm your Dada." I stood in the doorway, my hand over my mouth, sobbing. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. Michael didn't know it yet, but he was more than a husband or a father. He was the heir to a massive Chicago-based conglomerate, a secret he kept quiet to live humbly. But that was a story for another day. For now, we were enough. 10 years had passed since I stood in the rain, pregnant and abandoned, promising my unborn child I'd never give up. At 34, I barely recognized the girl I used to be. I wasn't just Emily, the small-town single mom, scraping by. I was Emily Harper, wife of Michael Harper, mother to Ethan, and a woman who'd built a life stronger than the pain that once defined her. We'd left our little Illinois town for Chicago, where Michael's quiet life as a hardware store owner gave way to his true role, heir to Harper Industries, a billion-dollar conglomerate in real estate and tech. He'd kept it secret to live humbly, but now we were stepping into that world together. Our home was a cozy brownstone in Lincoln Park, filled with Ethan's laughter and Michael's warmth. I'd traded my diner apron for a role at Harper Industries, leading their charitable foundation. We funded schools, women's shelters, and community centers, work that felt like giving back to the girl I'd been, the one nobody believed in. I'd walk into boardrooms in tailored dresses, my head high, but at night I was still mom, tucking Ethan into bed, reading him Harry Potter and kissing his forehead. He was 10 now, a lanky kid with Jake's blue eyes but Michael's kind heart. He was smart, curious, and already talking about wanting to build things like his dad. Michael's father, Richard Harper, was a force of nature, gruff, brilliant, and fiercely protective of his legacy. He'd taken to Ethan immediately, seeing him not as a step-grandson but as the future of the Harper empire. Richard would take Ethan to the office, teaching him about business over ice cream cones, calling him the sharpest kid I know. Michael and I never pushed Ethan toward that path, but Richard was certain. Ethan was born to lead. I never spoke of Jake to Ethan. Why would I? Michael was his father in every way that mattered. He'd been there for Ethan's first steps, his first day of school, his first broken arm from falling off a bike. When Ethan asked about his other dad, I'd say, "You have the best dad right here." Michael would ruffle Ethan's hair, and that was enough. Jake was a ghost, a shadow I'd buried long ago. I didn't need to hate him anymore. I didn't need to prove anything. My life, our life, was proof enough. Still, there were moments when the past crept in. I'd catch Ethan's eyes in the sunlight, so like Jake's, and feel a pang. Not for Jake, but for the girl who'd loved him, who'd believed his lies. I'd learned to let that girl go, to forgive her for trusting too much. Michael helped me heal, not just with his love, but with his belief in me. He'd say, "Em, you're unstoppable." And I started to believe it. Harper Industries was planning a massive event, a gala to announce the next generation of leadership. Richard wanted to name Ethan as his eventual successor, a symbolic gesture, for the boy he saw as his heir. "He's only 10, I protested, but Richard waved me off. "It's about legacy, Emily. The world needs to know this kid's the future." Michael agreed, though he insisted Ethan's childhood would come first. We planned the gala at the Drake Hotel, a glittering affair with Chicago's elite, politicians, CEOs, and media buzzing about the Harper heir. I stood in front of my mirror, adjusting my emerald green gown, nerves tingling. This wasn't just a party. It was a statement. Ethan would walk out on that stage, our boy, and the world would see what we'd built without Jake. I didn't want revenge, not really, but I wanted the universe to know I hadn't just survived. I'd thrived. Ethan was thriving. And Michael, the man who'd chosen us when another had thrown us away, was the rock we stood on. As I slipped on my heels, Ethan ran in, his tuxedo slightly crooked, grinning. "Mom, do I look cool?" I laughed, fixing his bow tie. "The coolest, kiddo." Michael joined us, his arm around me, and for a moment, we were just us. Our family, unbreakable. The gala loomed, and with it, a collision I never saw coming. The past was about to walk back into my life, and I wasn't ready. The Drake Hotel's grand ballroom glittered like a scene from a fairy tale. Chandeliers cast golden light over tables draped in white linen, where Chicago's elite sipped champagne and whispered about power and money. I stood near the stage, my emerald gown catching the light, Michael's hand warm in mine. Ethan, 10 years old and looking sharp in his tuxedo, fidgeted beside us, more excited about the dessert table than the speech he was about to give. Tonight, Harper Industries would name him as Richard's eventual successor, a symbolic nod to the boy who'd stolen everyone's hearts. I was proud, nervous, and something else. Unsettled, like the air held a storm I couldn't see. The gala was in full swing when I felt it, a prickle on the back of my neck, like someone was watching me. I scanned the crowd, my eyes landing on a man near the bar. My breath caught. Jake. Older now, his hair flecked with gray, but those piercing blue eyes were unmistakable. He wore a cheap suit, nothing like the tailored ones from our past, and stood with a group of minor business partners invited as a courtesy. What was he doing here? My heart pounded, but I forced myself to look away. This was my night, our night. He didn't get to ruin it. Michael squeezed my hand. "You okay, Em?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "Just nerves." I didn't tell him about Jake. Why would I? Jake was nothing to us now. But as the evening progressed, I felt his gaze, like a ghost from a life I'd buried. I focused on Ethan, who was practicing his speech with Richard, his small voice steady and proud. "I'm gonna make you and Dad proud, Mom," he said. I kissed his forehead. "You already do, kiddo." The moment arrived. The MC, a polished woman in a red dress, took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we celebrate the future of Harper Industries. Please welcome Richard Harper and his grandson, Ethan Harper, the named successor to this empire." The room erupted in applause as Richard led Ethan onto the stage. Ethan stood tall, his blue eyes, Jake's eyes, shining under the spotlight. He read his short speech, thanking his family and promising to make the world better. The crowd ate it up, charmed by his sincerity. I clapped until my hands hurt, Michael's arm around me, both of us beaming. But across the room, Jake's face told a different story. I saw him from the corner of my eye, frozen, his glass halfway to his lips. His eyes locked on Ethan, then darted to me, then back to Ethan. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. Those eyes. That face. He was doing the math, realizing the boy on stage wasn't just a prodigy, he was his son. His mouth opened slightly like he'd been punched in the gut. For a moment, I felt a twisted satisfaction. Look at what you threw away. The speech ended, and Ethan ran to us grinning. Did I do good? Michael scooped him up. You were a rock star, buddy. We moved through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting congratulations. I kept Jake in my peripheral vision. He was edging closer, his face pale, his steps hesitant. I braced myself. This wasn't about him, but if he wanted to face me, I was ready. He caught up to us near the dessert table, away from the main crowd. Emily, he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. I turned, my expression cold. Jake. Michael raised an eyebrow, sensing the tension, but stayed quiet, his hand on Ethan's shoulder. Jake's eyes flicked to Ethan, who was oblivious, munching on a cupcake. He's mine, isn't he? His voice cracked, a mix of shock and something like regret. The audacity of it, claiming Ethan now after 10 years of nothing, lit a fire in me. He's ours, I said, stepping closer, my voice steady. Mine and Michael's. You made your choice a long time ago, Jake. You don't get to claim him now just because he's on a stage you could never reach. His face crumpled, but I felt no pity. He'd chosen to walk away. I'd chosen to build a life. And tonight, the world had seen who won. The gala's glow faded into a quieter hum as guests mingled, their laughter echoing off the Drake Hotel's ornate walls. I stood by the dessert table, Ethan's cupcake crumbs on his tuxedo, Michael's steady presence beside me. Jake's words, he's mine, isn't he, hung in the air like smoke, threatening to choke the joy from the night. But I wasn't that 24-year-old girl anymore, shattered by his betrayal. I was Emily Harper, and I'd built a life too, strong for him to touch. Jake's eyes, desperate and glassy, searched mine. Emily, please, he said, his voice trembling. I need to know, is he my son? The crowd's chatter felt miles away. Ethan glanced up, curious, but Michael gently steered him toward a server offering mini eclairs, giving me space. I took a breath, my heart steady. Yes, I said, my voice calm but firm. Ethan is your biological son, but that's where your role ends. You walked away, Jake. You told me to get rid of him. You don't get to claim him now because he's extraordinary. Jake flinched like my words were a slap. I was young, Emily. I panicked. I wasn't ready. He ran a hand through his hair, his cheap suit wrinkling. But I'm here now. I want to make it right. Let me meet him. Let me be something to him. I almost laughed, not out of cruelty but disbelief. Make it right? I stepped closer, my voice low so Ethan wouldn't hear. You think you can waltz in after 10 years and make it right? Ethan has a father. Michael's been there for every fever, every school play, every moment you chose to miss. You don't get to rewrite that story. Jake's face crumpled, tears welling. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know I messed up, but he's my blood. Emily, doesn't that mean anything? I looked at Ethan, giggling as Michael pretended to steal his eclair. Those blue eyes, so like Jake's, used to haunt me. Now they were just Ethan's. Bright, kind, full of dreams. Blood doesn't make a father, I said. Love does. Sacrifice does. And you gave neither. He reached for my arm, desperate. Please, just one chance to talk to him. I'll do anything. I pulled back, my gaze unwavering. Jake, I forgive you. His eyes widened, but I wasn't done. Not for you, but for me. Holding on to hate was like carrying a weight I didn't need. But forgiveness doesn't mean a second chance. You made your choice, and I made mine. Ethan's happy. He's loved. He doesn't need you. And neither do I. Jake stood there, speechless, as the truth sank in. I saw the man he'd become. Smaller, broken, a shadow of the arrogant guy who'd left me in the rain. Part of me pitied him, but pity wasn't love. It wasn't obligation. I turned away, my heart light, and walked back to my family. Michael met my eyes. a silent question in his gaze. I nodded and he smiled, pulling me close. You okay? He murmured. Better than okay, I said, leaning into him. Ethan tugged at my dress. Mom, can we dance? I laughed, the tension melting. You bet, kiddo. The band struck up a slow song and we hit the dance floor. Ethan spinning between us, Michael's hand warm in mine. The gala's lights blurred, the crowd faded, and it was just us, my family, my home. Jake was still there, somewhere in the room, but he was irrelevant. He'd chosen to be a stranger, and I'd chosen to build a life without him. As the song ended, we headed for the exit, Ethan yawning. I glanced back one last time. Jake stood alone, watching us, his face a mix of regret and resignation. I didn't wave or nod. I just turned away, stepping into the cool Chicago night. Outside, our car waited, the city sparkling around us. I helped Ethan into the back seat, his head already drooping. Michael slid in beside me, his fingers lacing with mine. Proud of you, he said softly. I smiled, resting my head on his shoulder. Proud of us. As we drove away, I looked at Ethan in the rearview mirror, sleeping soundly, and at Michael, the man who'd chosen us when another hadn't. This was my victory. Not revenge, but joy. A family forged in love, not blood. And no ghost from the past could take that away.